I'm Mohammed Glaser, and I'm going to tell you about AI, our thoughts, our recent developments at BlueSpice when it comes to the question, how do we handle AI, how do we deal with AI beyond the chatbot era that is already taking place. I labeled this Connect and Act. So we are going to explore mostly how we can connect our external or internal AI tools, features to BlueSpice, and how we can enable them to actually work with the data in the wiki and perform actions on the wiki. That's a rough agenda for today. We are gonna talk about the relationship between wiki and AI, the existing and planned landscape at BlueSpice, so to give you a high-level overview, and then we're gonna dive into a few of those technologies or a few of those features we have developed or we are going to develop, and see how they can help and what you can actually do with them. Let's go right to the first question. So when you think about wikis and AI and the recent developments in AI, what I always hear as a software developer, people are asking me, do we still need wikis in the age of AI? AI knows a lot. What's the use of wikis? You probably also see that there's news about like software developers whose stock market value is falling. And the question, of course, is we have to actually really think about what is the place for us as a software, as a wiki developer, what is the place for a wiki in the age of AI, in the situation where everybody already has a tool at hand that knows basically a lot. So in order to answer the question, and I can spoiler it now already, I think obviously that wiki and AI to have a good symbiosis. So they work together quite well and they basically also need each other. Why is that? Why do I think so? Okay, let's first look at what is AI or what's from the perspective of wiki, what does an AI do and LLM, what can it do? So if you look at it, like if you look at OpenAI, Anthropic Claude, or these, what you see is that the AI has a huge, vast amount of general knowledge. It knows about almost everything. It can tell you about almost everything. It has an opinion on almost everything. So whatever you're asking, it knows about. It's designed to be that way, but still, it continues to amaze me where it can produce answers. It can contextualize information, it can make connections, and it can access most of the commonly available knowledge. At the same time, it can identify patterns. So it can organize a variety of topics into like categories or buckets. It can summarize texts. It can give you perspectives, various perspectives on the text. So it can actually contextualize the text. It can identify patterns in your knowledge base. Obviously, the thing that amazes all of us is that LLMs understand natural language. So it can understand new texts. It can follow instructions. It can go into a chat conversation with you, and all in your language, in a natural language, the way that humans also like to interact. And that's the fundamentally new thing about it. So it does interact in a almost perfect language. Last thing probably to mention is that AI is proactive or active. It can edit, it can expand and modify text, it can interact with your software, and it can fulfill tasks and actually do things in your software system. So what is a wiki in this context? Obviously, So in a wiki, what you have is it stores relevant knowledge. So wiki has knowledge about your organization, about your entity. It has the insights, the experiences, the rules, the guidelines, the the diagrams, the processes, your evaluations. It has a lot of stuff that is relevant to your organization, to your context, and that is not commonly available, right? So that's also an important thing. A wiki can incorporate new information, so it can incorporate new information really fast, and that is generally considered as one of the benefits of a wiki. That whenever there is some new information available, then someone comes and edits the respective wiki page and can actually update the content, can incorporate the new information rather quickly. So you have a high level of up-to-dateness of the content. At the same time, wikis are set to ensure content quality by quick error correction on the one hand, and that is not enough in the corporate context. So that's good in Wikipedia, where they have a huge amount of editors who have like almost infinite resources on that. In the organization, we have in particular BlueSpice being an enterprise wiki. We have added several additional mechanisms. There's version history, there's audit trails, there are approved mechanisms, there's a permission system, and all of that helps that we can keep the knowledge on a reliable level, on a basically an auditable level, which is transparent, which can which you can actually rely on. And what's also special about the wiki as compared to other software systems is that it contains almost exclusively natural language content. So obviously the articles in the wiki are human readable, but also the metadata in the wiki is self-explanatory. So categories have names, properties have and relations, they are named in natural language. Namespaces, like the areas you have, they do have labels and names. So we see a lot of, for those of you who have semantic media wiki running, we see that metadata has properties which have wiki pages which explain what this property is about. So it's self-explanatory. And that is something that will come in very handy when you think about LLMs, because LLMs do understand these explanations. They can read it, they can then make something out of it and can add to their wiki. So the question now is, how does that fit together? How do we see it? We see that Wiki and AI do have a strategic symbiosis. So a wiki basically can act as a source of truth. So that is knowledge that is verified. The content in the wiki is curated and it's transparent. So you know who did when and what. So that comes in handy when you think about compliance of the text you provide. And since all of this is done in natural language, it's an ideal place for humans and LLMs and AI to work together and develop and then further the verified knowledge in the system. So basically, you have the active part, that is the LLM, that puts the knowledge in the wiki to action. But the knowledge, the thing you consider to be very verified, that can be put in the wiki, and the wiki provides the mechanisms to actually verify the pieces of knowledge and say, okay, this is what we all have agreed on. And this together gives a very robust information and knowledge management system. Okay, by the way, if you have any questions, I will read, I also look at the chat from time to time, so just paste your questions in the chat. I try to answer them as they come in, or when we have these like intermediary sections. Okay, let's take a quick look at the landscape, the AI landscape of BlueSpice. So what do we have and where are we going to? So instead of aligning those each other on a timeline, I decided to align them alongside the function that they have. So we have a section where we use AI to retrieve content, to delete content out of the wiki and do something with it. We have a section where we connect external tools, external AIs, external services with the wiki. And then there is also a part of our wiki efforts where we actually act on the content. So we edit the content, we do something with the content. If you read these features, then the things that are on the top, in the top rows, they are already present. We have already done that. The further it goes down, the more experimental these features are. So let's just take a quick look. On the retrieval side, obviously the thing that everybody has had experience with so far is chatbots. So also BlueSpice does have a chatbot. We run that on a rack system. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about that in a minute. It's embedded in our UI user interface. So we have that already on a product level. But that's not the end of our efforts. So when it comes to more active parts, more complex parts, then we are investigating research agents at the moment. I'm going to tell you a little bit about that later on. So that would be more complex information retrieval. On the connect side, we already can reach out to other AI tools. So for example, there's an integration with an AI-powered search that is iFinder of Interfind. So we can already connect to that. We have provision, we can provide data to external chatbots, so that's also possible. And we can connect wikis with several other applications like Teams and Rocket.js, Slack, etc. On the more the roadmap for the next release, we have the MCP server. So that is where you can connect external AI agents. We're going to touch that. And also, you can use skills in your AI tools to connect to BlueSpice. That's also something on top of that. And on the act side, so where do we actually change content? We also do have a few features already in place. So there's automated translation based on DeepL, a fantastic translation service. We have the AI editing assistant that summarizes your content, helps you a little bit in writing content and create things. So expand or shrink content, stuff like that. In addition, we are developing a framework for getting additional AI features into the wiki called AI gadgets. And we have a set of editorial agents, or we're thinking about a set of editorial agents that can actually create content in the wiki, including external knowledge sources, including content from external knowledge sources. So that's also on the table. And maybe in some future, we can also have some sort of a system that helps you write complex templates or Lua scripts, so to even enable you to write more complex features. All that is, it requires you to be connected to an external LLM. So that's where we draw the line. We do not host or run LLMs for you. We pass that on to service providers, or you bring your own LLM. That's also possible. Currently, we focus mostly on European providers, such as Ionos, but also the Microsoft Azure OpenAI, which you can run on European servers. It's also possible to connect to OpenAI directly, or to use Olama, which is a tool where you can run models locally on your computer. As for the models, we mostly recommend using OpenAI's GPT models. So they can run either as the open source model OSS or provided by OpenAI or by Azure. But we are also actively looking into other models like Mistral, which is a European-based model, or also service providers like Keepits, who provide AI services to local, to government or research. Okay. Now let's look a little bit more into some of the individual technologies. And first of all, let's look at how BlueSpice handles RAG systems and how we can transfer data there. So when you work with BlueSpice, you probably are aware that we do have a chatbot that is integrated in the interface of BlueSpice. There you can ask the wiki questions about any content of the wiki that is already indexed. And that's basically what we also ship with BlueSpice, so it's productive right now. But the thing is, we do not force you to use our own chat interface every time you want to chat, to interact with the wiki via chat. But we also provide you with the means of adding your own technology at certain parts. Okay, so how can we do this? Or how can you imagine jumping in here? I'm sorry. So if in order to see where you can actually tap into this information stream, we have to see how a chat is built internally and what are the components. So basically, we have two ways or two parts of this. One part is the chat part. So we have a chat client. That's what you just saw in the wiki. But you can also use a different chat client, like the Teams of a Stack client. And you connect to our BlueSpice chat service. Then that is routed to the BlueSpice AI service. And here, that is where basically your request, so if you ask something to the wiki, then your question comes from the chat client to the BlueSpice chat service, then to the AI service. And now we can do different things. So the easy one is we can just pass your question on to the LLM. So that would be the super easy way for us. We don't have to do any further and we get back the answer. However, that's a bit of a problem because we want that special knowledge of the wiki. So that's where the wiki part comes in. So what we do instead is, in a second step, we basically analyze the content of the wiki. We call that embedding. We create so-called vectors of the contents of the wiki, and we store them in a database in the RAG system. RAG, by the way, means retrieval augmented generation. So that means whenever you ask a question, we augment that question with some additional information, and we then send that to the editor before, So we pre-process your query in a certain way. So overnight, maybe, or when we start the wiki, or whenever something changes, we do this process of actually indexing, of preparing the content so that it can be read by the RAG. Then you ask your question, and the question comes via BlueSpice chat, goes to the BlueSpice AI service, and then the BlueSpice AI service looks into the Neo4j database and into the database and says, hey, is there something relevant I can already provide to the LLM from my knowledge in the wiki? So if it finds something, it adds that to your question, and the question basically that is, what we said to the LLM is basically, please answer this question with the context we just provide you and find the correct answer. And then we get something back, which we send back to you. So that is the augmenting part of it. Why do we do that? First of all, most of the organizational knowledge stays inside the organization. Only if it's needed, it goes out to the LLM. Second is we can actually gatekeep the information. So we can look for like permissions. We can check if it's some highly sensitive content which should not go out to the LLM. And basically we have control over the data we send. And third, obviously, is we instruct the LLM to not use its own general knowledge, but to only use the domain knowledge which you have in your organization. And that reduces the amount of like hallucinations or imaginary answers to a bare minimum. Okay, so back to our original question. Where can you extend the RAG system? How can you bring your external resources? How can you connect? So say you have the super LLM that is way better than the OpenAI's ChatGPT model. How can we actually use that? And it's basically, in this scenario, it's rather easy because HelloWorld or BlueSpice, we do stop here. So we set it the augmented prompt to any LLM you give to us. If you host in our cloud, we do have suggestions to you, and we can book the LLM for you. But basically, we don't care which LLM is in the background. I mean, there are some that produce better results and some that produce worse results. But basically, you can give us your own LLM. They have, as long as they have standardized interfaces, and there is a quasi-standard, that's the OpenAI standard or the Olam standard. And as long as you stick to that, we can also connect to your LLM instead of the LLM that's hosted on Microsoft Azure. So that gives us a wide range of possible LLMs to hook onto and to use. If that is not enough for you, so say, for example, you have a service provider that runs an AI service within your organization, and they already provide a RAG system that is specifically tuned to your organization. Then what you also can do is we can connect our chat interface and the wiki to the external RAG that you provide. So basically, we as we have these service components, we can instruct the service components like the wiki and the chat to talk to your RAG instead of talking to our RAG. I have to be fair though, this may require some changes in the API. So we are able to export to basically get our wiki data to an external RAG if there's any standard interface. So if you have a REST API or you have file-based exchange, then we can easily do it. The same holds true for the chat. So this is a standard API, then we can connect to that LLM. Otherwise, there may be some customization. But we have done that in the past. So we have worked with external RAG systems, and it's fairly possible. So we can connect to external RAGs. If you want to go even one step further and not use any chat that we provide, then you can also go even further. So that is the case, for example, if you connect to Copilot, Microsoft Copilot. Then the only thing we do is we push the data from the wiki to some handover place. So in the case of Microsoft Copilot, that's often a place in OneDrive. That is indexed by Copilot, and then Copilot does all the rest, and we don't even care about the mechanism. So we don't know if that is a RAG system or something else. And Copilot then just has access to the data. In that scenario, that's also possible. But obviously, what you have to consider whenever you use the RAG, your own RAG, and not the RAGs of BlueSpice, is you have to deal with permissions in your own, because we send the like an agreed set of documents to the handover place, but we cannot handle the permissions as we can if that's our own way. So that's something you have to keep in mind. But there are typically patterns for it. So one pattern is, for example, you go with least privilege. You say, okay, everything that basically any user of the system can read can be indexed in these external systems. So that's one approach of doing it. Or maybe the external systems already do have some idea of handling permissions. Then we obviously can also adjust to that. Okay, let's move on. So the RAG system is basically about reading, about retrieving content from the wiki. Now, what if you have an external AI service that wants to somehow interact with the wiki or wants to do something? And to that end, a software an AI company called Anthropic, they came up with this cool idea that's called Modest Complex Protocol, MCP. And basically, with the help of MCP, you can connect your AI to databases, tools, and software. You can think of it as like the USB-C plug for AI. So you can provide that plug for your software, and then AI can just plug into that. That's not my metaphor. So I stole that off the internet, but I find it quite graspable to think of it like this. So the thing is that the MCP protocol is self-explanatory. You don't have to actually do a lot of stuff to your AI, as long as it is somehow possible, somehow capable of reading MCP definitions. You can just make your tool available, say, here's the MCP, and then the AI can start using it because it knows how to handle this. That's the idea of this MCP protocol. It's self-explanatory. And then the LLM can actually do anything you provide. So in our case, you can read data, you can edit it, you can delete and move content in the wiki. So maybe let's just take a quick look. So that's looking to the code of the MCP definition. I find that rather interesting. For two reasons. One of them is I can show you here what capabilities we already can provide in the next product version. So that is not available yet, but it's about to come. So we can create pages, delete pages in the wiki, we can edit pages, we can retrieve some lists like namespaces and categorizing pages. We can move pages, and we can perform searches. So that is the very basic operations you can do with the wiki. The good thing is this list is expandable. It's even expandable in the sense that we can do your own your product customizations. So if you have a customer-specific extension, we can also add MCP definitions. So we can maybe tune them to your needs. So even if we have things like create page, then you may want a special way of creating pages, we can then tune the MCP definition to your own ways of creating pages. So if you take a look at the definition here, the interesting thing I want to point you to and want you to notice is that what we actually do is we describe the functionality with natural language. So here that says, okay, if you want to create a page, then please send me something with the parameter source, title, comment. That's what we need. And you'll get back ID, title, and key and whatnot, bits. And then we describe it. So we say, what is the source? So that's the text or the content of the page. We could say in Markdown or in Wiki text in our case. So we could say, please as concise as possible. So we can, we can shape what we accept as potential inputs here. And we can do that in a language, again, that is understandable by humans as well as, and I mean by ordinary humans, not by tech people. So that is understandable by ordinary humans and as well as by LLMs. So that's one of these interesting new features in the world of LLM, that we have one common language. If you look at it from a structure side, so that's a little bit techy here. What we do is we have the wiki, and the wiki has two things, or basically it hands over a list of capabilities to the MCP server, which the MCP server can then present to any language model. So the language model would go to your wiki and would say, what can I do with you? And then the MCP server, equipped with the information from the wiki, says, okay, here you can edit, delete, create, search, etc., etc. And wiki, the LLM says, aha, okay, so now I know what I can do. It has a task, and then it decides, now I need to edit. And then it goes to the MCP server with the parameters that we have defined. And the MCP server translates that into actually API calls in the wiki. So here's basically in the MCP server does a translation of the technology and hands back the answer to the LLM. So, and that can be done iteratively. So whenever you have something, Claude AI is planning, has a very cunning plan of doing something in the wiki, it can then do it in several steps and basically do everything that we allow via the MCP structure. Okay. Now, that is a generic way. MCP is a generic way of connecting your external AI tools. What if we want to have some more functionality inside the wiki? Now, here is a function or a functionality we developed. We call it AI gadgets, which we developed specifically for the purpose of rapidly prototyping new features. I can tell you a little bit about the internals of HelloWorld here, and I probably assume that it's also similar in other software development companies. We have different interests here in different people. So my job as a tech manager is I need to bring in innovation. So I say, hey, we have this AI and the world around us is evolving. We need to do something about it. Let's get AI to the product. But then I have, and I'm very happy to have them, I have very responsible product managers and product architects. And they say, hey, when we add something now to the product, we have a contract with the customer that we need to support it for a long time because we want to have a stable product. So better think twice or three times if you want to really add that to the product if you need it there. And that's, of course, a very important feature of very enterprise software that we provide stable service. At the same time, we need to react to the evolving market around us and to the evolving demand. So, and in particular, this is true for the AI world, where even like the already fast innovation cycles that we have in IT are basically on steroids, and AI innovation cycles are super fast. So it's really hard to keep pace with that. So basically, what we came up with was the idea of a framework for AI gadgets. So what we give you is the framework is stable. That's part of the product. And that framework enables us to create features and to ship them in basically as portions of wiki text or wiki pages that are not to be supported on the product level, but we can still innovate with them. So AI gadgets are basically little AI helpers that you can see all around the wiki. I'm going to give you examples soon. They perform well-defined tasks. They perform isolated tasks. So they are not general purpose like a chat, but they are something that give me a summary of this edit, or add and a description of this image, like these really small well-defined tasks. The AI gadgets allow us to use to integrate these things into the UI. So you will get a button for it that can perform this task, and they are extensible. So power users, if you are familiar with the writing code, you can develop them. Or you will be able to develop them once we have published documentation on that, obviously. And you can do so because we decided to put them in what we call userland. So userland is anything you can access from the Wiki via the browser. So you do not have to have server access to create AI gadgets. You can do it by just adding stuff to a Wiki page and maybe tweak a setting or so. So that's the idea behind gadgets. But what's important is gadgets do not have product-grade stability. So we intend to provide functionality fast, but maybe then at some point say, okay, this is functionality nobody needs. We want to remove it without waiting for the cycles, for the software cycles. This is basically the compromise we have. Examples for gadgets are, for example, the categories. So you have, if you have an article, you can let the AI suggest you categories for this article, or you can generate a summary for your edit. Or you can generate a summary for this page. And here is an example analyzing emotional color, where we basically prototype something, but then we figured that this is probably not something you need in an enterprise context. Because what we do, but most of the users of BlueSpice do is they have a very formal and neutral documentation in the Wiki, so we're not so much affected by emotional color of a text. But we wanted to see if it works out and if we can do it, right? So that is something we will probably remove soon from a standard delivery of the product. But still, the gadget is there in the wiki text, and if somebody needs it, we can just provide the wiki text for you, and then you can basically enable this gadget for your wiki again. Was also, I think, very, what I like very much about these AI gadgets is we are also working on a tool set around that. So basically, deploying these AI gadgets, I said they live in userland, so they live in wiki articles, but it requires 2 or 3 articles and modifications in the list to do so, and maybe for the not so experienced users, they may just forget 1 or 2 of those things. And in order to not forget things, we have created a deployment script, which is for now still not publicly available, but I guess it will be. That takes care of all these things and allows you to easily deploy these gadgets or not. And for example, I started writing one of those gadgets together with the help of an AI service, and then used this tool to deploy it. Shipped smoothly to my target wiki. So that actually is very useful. Obviously, we could create an MCP endpoint for it at some point, but it's even much more easy. But yeah, one thing at a time. Okay, let's move on. So when we have, but by the way, if there's any questions, just feel free to ask. We can attach external agents to the wiki. And one of the ways of doing this, which is currently also a trending topic in the AI world, is skills, bioskills. So skills are basically some sort of predefined tasks or predefined recipes which you give your AI. So OpenAI does have skills, Claude does have skills, Mistral does have skills. It's basically a description of something, of a task that, may be executed repeatedly. And you say, if I want to do this, or if you as the AI want to do this, you should please perform the following steps. Please take care that be cautious about X, Y, and Z. Don't try more than once. If this happens, then stop the execution, stuff like that. So you can really instruct it to do things in a predefined way. And the description is in natural language. Could also be like a key, as you see, is in a natural language, and it can also be produced by the AI itself. So I created a few skills with the help of AI, but then I can read them and I can say, okay, this is how I want it to be. What are examples? One easy example is posting to the Wiki. So even though we do not have that MCP server available yet, we can create a skill. Yeah, that's important. Skills also have some area in with the provider where they can actually execute code. So technically, as I understand it, is they like if you have a skill at Claude, then at the servers of Claude, a Docker container, some sandbox container is spun up, and that can execute code you give it, like a Python script or something. And via that mechanism, you can also reach out to APIs. So that's what we actually tried before the MCP situation. And we asked the Claude to post to the Wiki, which is possible, which can be done. It can also be done in a way that is safe. So you don't, you obviously, you have to at some point share your credentials with that sandbox. But the credentials, like the security information, is not passed through the chat. So it doesn't go through any, it doesn't leave any traces there. So one example is posting to the Wiki. So that's what such a skill looks like. I'm sorry, part of it is in German, but you also see that as a typical AI thing, that it mixes languages. It doesn't really care about which language this is written in. So that's a skill for the Wiki writer with this Wiki client PY, which it basically also created on its own, my instructions or my help. Then I give it some title conventions. So I give very specific instructions and say, if you want to write to the Wiki, please follow the following rules. Something. Now, where it becomes more interesting is in the second example, that's what I see like supplier evaluation. Now, as we are being certified ISO 27001, and we also need to adhere to GDPR compliance, we need to evaluate our suppliers before we onboard them, which means I have to go through a list of features, which I have to ask them and check, where's the data, where's the dead sea, how fast do they reply, do they have the Microsoft suppliers in place, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That's a very time-consuming process. So I thought maybe I can have AI do part of the job for me. And that works surprisingly well. Using that skill. So basically, I created a skill, not skill. I created a skill. I gave I added the list of things I want to identify. I also pasted that into the skill. And then in the end, I said, please use the Wiki writer skill to post your findings to the Wiki. And then you can do something like, hey, please evaluate the supplier Claude AI for me. And it runs and it tries to research everything, again, with sources, and then it saves this result to the Wiki. Of course, you cannot take it for granted. So once it's saved to the Wiki, it is not published. So we have a workflow, a review mechanism, and it needs to be approved, obviously by a human, before it works. But it helps a lot, and it actually gets my allows me to actually have a lot of spend a lot of less time on research. Like obviously, with all the notes of caution you have with the AI system. There was just a question coming in when the MCP support will be available. That will be available with the next minor product version. So it will be on BlueSpice 5. I know that it is available even before if you need it as a customization. We'll have it ready roughly in the next 2 or 3 weeks. So that's the internal product readiness we have. It will be published in the next BlueSpice version. Okay, let's go a little bit further to the last step. So internal agents. When we talked about skills, we talked about agents that are external to BlueSpice. So that is what I'm doing as a product manufacturer is I put the burden of coming up with good ideas of what you could do in the wiki. I put that on you. But we are pretty sure, we know that there are tasks in the wiki that can easily be handled by agents that keep your documentation clean, that identify stuff. And to that end, we are also actively working on creating agents or functionality, agent-like functionality in the wiki that helps you maintain and understand the content in your wiki better. So one of the areas is identification of patterns or of context of content things. Here I want to mention one project in particular, which we have with the Fraunhofer Institute, Fraunhofer IWP. That's called ChatBot. And the idea of this research project or innovation project is that we identify gaps in the knowledge base of a bakery, in this concrete example. We identify knowledge gaps in the knowledge knowledge base of a bakery, and then we try to create an agent that actually actively seeks to fill in these gaps by reaching out to people and asking them for that information. And the one part of this is identify the gaps. So that is something we're just working on. And we do that by actually converting wiki articles into some sort of a skeleton or a fingerprint of an article and that can identify patterns like you have all the minutes pages, and all of the minutes pages have a list of attendees, but in this minutes page you're just about to create, you're missing the list of attendees. So it will warn you. You can find that and can say, okay, there are so many similar pages, they all follow this pattern. Your page doesn't. So maybe you want to actually also follow the pattern. It works surprisingly well, even now in our prototypical scenario, if you have a defined document structure, the document base. But what we are about to do is we want to extend that to a more general purpose way of organizing knowledge. So like you see it in a lot of commonly used wikis where you have different areas of knowledge that are saved there. And we want to make sure that it understands that there are different areas and applies different patterns. What the identification part also could do and should do is find obsolete items like articles that are outdated. We already do some sort of assessment on that when we pre-process the data for the chatbot. So the chatbot already has an idea of which data is outdated or obsolete and which is like much more up to date. We're trying to detect duplicates or identify inconsistencies. So that are areas where we are currently doing some research on. We have first first results, which are very promising, but not something which we have already in place. And going even further on that, of course, agents also can do a lot of editorial work. They can create summaries, they can create overview pages, they can consolidate the content. They can check that's called drift detection. They can check if that stuff you have in the wiki may be true, but maybe the trends in the outside world are going elsewhere. There's some new information you should incorporate into your information. And then eventually they could even try and incorporate these research findings. So we are working on these things. What's important though, and that is a thing I want to emphasize a lot, is we need to make sure that the division of tasks, the split of tasks, which I said initially, Wiki is the source of truth for the AI to act on, that this stays alive and this is respected. So if you put too much AI-generated content into the Wiki, we may get into a situation where the actual preciseness of the Wiki content is diluted, because what AI can, AI texts are typically a little bit wobbly. They're not as precise. They add a lot of words to stuff, and we want to actively see to it that we don't get into a loop that makes the content always worse, because the content set feeds itself. So that's the thing. Where whenever we provide features, we will take care that this loop of informative self-destruction is broken at times. So be it reviews or approvals, or be it that we say, okay, AI can write to just some restricted areas which we don't use for information. We don't know yet, but we have to make sure that is. Okay, that was a round trip through the current developments and ideas on what's next with BlueSpice. And now it's your call in two ways. One is, if you have any questions, ideas, remarks, criticism, good things, bad things, now is the time to talk about it. And obviously also, I showed you a lot of ways how to actually interact with AI and Wiki, which are already possible. And it's your call to become creative and make your Wiki actionable. Just as a quick reminder, I can put on the slides we had here, that's the one. And so you can see what kind of tools we touch. Okay, any questions? Well, that's not the case. Then all that I have left is I want to wish you a nice rest of the day, nice rest of the week. Whenever there are any questions on the AI, my team and I will be happy to answer them via the already well-known and published communication channels. Thank you very much and have a nice day.
We just have one question coming in, like just now.
The internal BlueSpice agents, how are they trained? No, we don't train. So we guardrail them. If we have internal agents, we do it like the skills. We tell them what to do. We use things like orchestration software like n8n to do that, but we do not train models. So that's not out in our reality to do so. We just instruct them to do things.